Okay, my pal, about the panel. I went to great lengths to keep this what's known as an eyebrow, which is, if I could touch it without still filming, this piece here. This pops right off and reveals a rather ugly looking back plate, which is what most guys use for their panel. This is the original way this aircraft, the panel is completely original, is what I'm trying to say. Not all the instruments are. For example, the Horizon, that's original. Now, I'm not saying this was the same one in the plane when it was in 1952, but that's an original instrument. So is the miserable looking, actually the lovely looking, miserable horizontal, the fuck is that called? That compass, I can't think of it at the moment. Altimeter, made to look original, because what I did, I had these instruments taken out and shipped out and to simulate the yellow radium for night flying that they used to use. Suction gauge, VSI. The VSI in there, that's a kind of a modern thing. But the deal is, it's kind of indispensable for instrument flying, so that's why that's there. This instrument, Omni bearing selector, I guess you could call it, that's actually more a part of the autopilot system, and it'll show you your left or right of center, of course, and of course that VSI, that's good for two things. One is for obviously the glide slope, and the other is for programming a descent. So if you're at altitude, you can set your box so that it tells you, it gives you a time to descend, and you can program in there, say, I want to go down 500 feet a minute at certain speed, blah, blah, blah. And then it'll calculate, okay, you're at top of descent, and then that glide slope indicator will operate off of that, which is, it's a nav system rather than the radio ILS system. Airspeed, an original looking instrument, one or the other, can't remember which. Autopilot system, it's got the three modes there. It's got steering, heading, and track, either low sensitivity or high sensitivity track. Let's see if we could, I probably can't engage it right now. What would it prove anyway? Original compass, no, not original compass, I take that back. I had an original compass in there, very leaky, spent years trying to make that work. This is in there largely for FAA reasons. It's required in the airplane. Occasionally I reference it, whatever, how it goes. Manifold pressure, made to look original with the, once again with the yellow pseudo radium on there. Of course radium is illegal now. Cylinder temp, fuel, carb temp, critical for why. Ammeter, place for yet another instrument there. This gauge gives you oil temperature at the top, gives you oil pressure at the bottom left, and it gives you fuel pressure at the bottom right. I don't know about how original that instrument is. I think it probably is. This little addition, thanks to my mom. She bought this for me. This is an electric powered Horizon, unlike the one over there, which is suction pump, vacuum pump off the engine. So you lose your engine, you're going for a glide, you've lost this. Or you have a malfunction of some sort. Let's say you have an electrical malfunction, or this artificial horizon goes tits up. Now you've got that one to back it up. If you do not have both two horizons with separate sources of power, and you elect to fly it in the clouds, all I can say is I hope your insurance payments are up to date. And I'm fucking serious about that. Partial panel flying is a fucking joke. Okay, for reasons I'll explain later. Transponder, I don't know, SL70, whatever the hell that is. It's a plain vanilla transponder. Over here, you've got a jack that was put in case, this is another backup system. I have a handheld radio. If all your radios were to fail, you can plug a handheld radio into that jack and then continue to communicate through the antenna of the aircraft, which will give you proper range as opposed to just using the handheld, which will give you 2 or 3 miles. So you can, in fact, talk to ATC with a handheld if your radios were to go kaput. Control for the cabin heater. Let's see. The lighter, that has been disabled because I don't smoke cigarettes, and I also gave up cigars. The reason for it's been disabled as a lighter, however, it's still here for cosmetic reasons because it looks cool. But what I use this for is to power, it's still powered. So I use it for the iPad or other devices, or if you want to power a cell phone. So that still works. Starter button, carb heat. What can I show? Oh, let's talk about the radios. This is a GX60. I don't believe they're any longer in production. Apollo, taken over by Garmin. It's a nav comm, as you can see. So right now I've got it in map function. So that's your number 1 VHF, and then below it is an SL30, same manufacturer, Navcom. To call it a nav is a bit of a stretch, but it will pick up. It picks up the VORs. You may remember it. I think that stands for very old radio or something like that. I'm not sure what VORs are anymore. But anyway, so that's a nav in that sense. But you have two communication radios, which of course I find to be extremely useful, and I use it that way all the time. And the panel on the bottom is just your, I forget what they call them, your selector panel. You can switch back and forth between nav and comm with that. Over here we have an early model flat screen display. It's not painting anything at the moment because I'm in the hangar and it can't pick up a satellite. But it's extremely useful, and even with the iPad, if I have the iPad in my lap, I continue to use it. This is a MX20. It's just invaluable to have that there, and I reference it continuously in addition to the iPad. If I didn't have an iPad, no problem. Of course, I was flying this plane in the clouds for years before there were iPads. The benefit of the iPad is that perhaps it's a larger, clear display, and you have ForeFlight and you have stuff like that. But just for flying, there you have it. And frankly, just to fly it with an iPad and not this display, that part would make me just a little bit uncomfortable. Over here we got, I went to some length to get this panel right. With your electrical panel with your various switches all nicely labeled. Notice the crank. The cranks that Cessna used back then were the ones that Chevy used, so I'm told. And that, of course, is for the window. What else can I tell you? Oh, okay. On the yoke, the way I've got it set up, I had it done this way. I put, as you can see, I put ident, transmit, storm scope, clear. I don't use the storm scope much anymore, but I used to use it particularly on the East Coast. Storm scope, of course, you know what that is. It's poor man's radar, and in a lot of ways it's better than radar. A lot of ways it's not, but in a lot of ways it is. And on the other side, we've got altitude hold for the autopilot, and this is co-pilot's transmit button. The yoke can be pushed back like that against the control panel. Let me show you again. You've got your trim wheels down here, rudder and elevator, and then at the very bottom you've got aileron. This I had put in hand mic, the old-fashioned kind, because frankly there's a lot of times when you're working around the airplane, you need to make a call God knows what, and who wants to put their headset on? So this comes in very handy. You do have lights for night flying over here, illuminate the panel. Some of these instruments are already internally lit, but mostly you would rely on the, what do you call these things? Grimes lights, I think they're called. And let me see what else. Oh, I wanted to show you another flaw. Here, have a look at this. These things were originally, these were kind of shabby, so I had them taken out and repainted. Nonetheless, as time went on and things happened, it got chipped, which was very disappointing. But there you have it. It doesn't exist on this side, but it unfortunately it exists on the pilot side. So you got some chips there. I guess it could be touched up. Don't know about repainting the whole thing because they're rather old bits. Inertial shoulder harnesses. Don't fly without shoulder harnesses. A lot of these planes don't have them. They're not required, but I require it. Air vents over here, and of course we got. I can't show you here because it's a bit of a mess, but we've got room for 3 headset jacks for the back seat because this is certified for 5 passengers. That's it for the cockpit.